Her fingers curled around the grip of the rifle like it was part of her, like it had been there forever. And then a hand reached for it. Big, square, authoritative. The Admiral's voice was sharp, clipped, echoing across the range. "You don't need that cannon. Step aside." His other hand closed on the barrel, as though to pry it from her, and for a heartbeat, it looked as though he might succeed. But she didn't let go. The world seemed to narrow to just that moment. The smell of gunpowder hanging in the air, the metallic taste of adrenaline rising in her mouth, the faint grit of sand beneath her boots. Around them, a dozen sailors stood frozen, their faces unreadable, the air taut with unspoken challenge. She did not say a word. She simply held on until the Admiral's jaw flexed with frustration. Then, without breaking eye contact, she snapped the rifle back into her control, chambered around, and turned toward the distant targets. Her name was Claire. She had been forged in 1,000 quiet battles long before this one. She was not the loudest in a room, never the first to raise her hand, never the one who demanded recognition. But she had spent years learning that respect wasn't given, it was earned, over and over again, in places most people never saw. Once, she had been a teenager in a small Midwestern town, with a smile too soft for the world she was about to enter. Her father had been a machinist, her mother a nurse, and she had grown up on stories of uncles who'd served overseas. When she turned 18, she signed her name on a line that would carry her farther than she ever imagined. To deserts where the air shimmered with heat and the nights were so cold they burned. Claire had learned to shoot because she had to. Not because she loved it, not because she wanted to be the best, but because her unit needed someone who could hit what others could not. She learned to slow her breathing until it was as steady as the stars, to measure wind by the twitch of a flag, to calculate distance by instinct alone. And when the day came that she used that skill to save her team, a single, perfect shot from half a mile away, she never spoke of it again. The only proof was the life that had been spared and the memory of the commander's quiet nod. Now, standing on the range with the Admiral's disapproval hanging heavy in the air, she felt that same calm descend on her. Not anger, not pride, just focus. The first shot rang out, and the farthest target quivered, the bullet dead center. The sailors behind her inhaled sharply. She didn't look back. The second shot came almost before the first had finished echoing. Another perfect hit, then a third, then a fourth. By the fifth shot, no one was breathing. The sixth round landed so precisely that it struck through the hole left by the first. She lowered the rifle, not triumphantly, but with the kind of quiet finality that made it clear she was finished. The Admiral stood rigid, his face unreadable, and for a long, still moment, no one moved. The silence that followed was not empty. It was reverent, almost sacred. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, stripped of the sharpness from before. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Claire just gave him a level look, the faintest trace of dust clinging to her cheek, and replied with words that would live on long after this day. "I don't miss. Not when it matters." Around them, the sailors straightened, their eyes shining with something unspoken. Respect, admiration, perhaps even pride that they had just witnessed something rare. The Admiral stepped back, just enough to let her pass, and nodded once. It wasn't an apology, but it was something deeper, an acknowledgement. Word spread quickly. By the time the day ended, recruits were whispering about the woman who had stood her ground, about the 6 perfect shots that silenced a man whose voice usually filled entire rooms. Claire walked away without looking back, her rifle cradled in her arms like a trusted friend. That night, she sat alone on the edge of her bunk, staring at her hands. They were calloused, strong, and steady, but they had not shaken once. She thought of the younger version of herself, scared and stubborn, wondering if she would ever be enough. And she wished that girl could see her now, not for the skill, not for the perfect shots, but for the stillness she had learned to carry inside herself. True strength was not loud. It did not shout its victories or demand applause. It was steady hands on a trigger that never wavered, a spine that stayed straight when authority pressed down, a voice that only spoke when there was something worth saying. If you're watching this, you know someone like Claire. Someone who doesn't need to raise their voice to be heard. Someone whose quiet dignity makes a room fall silent. Share this story with them. And tell us where you're watching from. Because the world needs to hear about people who remind us that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand your ground and hit your mark every single time.